Hello, and welcome to the Seeking Heaven channel. I'm your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, a six-time near-death experiencer, an evidential medium, and conscious channeler. So if you haven't been here before, why not? Sign up, subscribe, and like and make comments. I have a lot of fascinating guests and also spiritual teachings. And if you want spiritual teachings, be sure to check out my Academy of Divine Wisdom.com, where I have a free Christ-like guided meditation. It's 30 minutes. It's really nice. It's very similar to that light brought to me in my NDE. I also have paid classes, spiritual development coaching, spiritual readings, as well as if you're interested in having a psychic medium and life path reading, go to southernbellemedium.com, where you will have a sacred session with me. And check out my Seeking Heaven channel store. I've got some really cool custom design merchandise like Rockstar Seed, the Galactic Federation. I work for the Office of Christ. Some really cool custom merchandise just for you. And I'll be having more of that too, especially some more Starseeds merchandise, but really cool stuff there. And again, finally, just if you can donate to the channel or help in any way, that would be great to offset a lot of the costs that I have, a lot of technical costs. It would be much appreciated to consider being a member, as low as $2.99 up to $24.99. Whatever you can do is much, much appreciated. All right, so now we're going to get to our guest today. I can't wait, who is a personal friend. I think the world of him. And today we're going to have Victor Fuhrman, who is the radio host of Times and is known as Victor the Voice, which is so appropriate. And before I bring him on, I'm going to talk a little bit about him. First of all, I met Victor on Portal to Ascension in January of 2024, where we were both thrown into the Zoom room as co-hosts for 4 days. I thought it was just a little segment I was doing, but then we ended up going 8 and 9 hour days. It was like a marathon. I was like, I would go and then, rest a minute and do things and then come back and then we do it again. But we co-hosted the Portal to Ascension Star Beings Conference, and I got to meet him and see what an amazing, he's a poet. I mean, he's a storyteller, and that's such a rare ability. You don't hear storytelling, and we really need that. We learn through experience, and he's so colorful. He's so animated. He is not only a radio host, an amazing voice, but he is so many things. He's also an ordained minister, and he has a doctorate in seminary. We got that back in 2020. He's a healer. He works with energy. He has a program called Inner Vision. He can tell you about that, where he's used that to help people with healing with their energy, and he can speak on that. But I want to hear about. He has this wealth of this future. I mean, his he has a wealth of a future, but a wealth of a history. Like when he was in armed forces, he was a journalist, and he became in radio back then. And with me, my father being in radio, and he was a DJ for years. He had the voice too, and he would always train us to pronounce our words and answer the phone properly. That I was around a lot of people with radio voices in that radio thing, which was an art back then. So it's such a joy to be able to meet a real radio entertainer and host. You are an entertainer. You're very entertaining. You're very entertaining. Is Victor Fuhrman, Victor the Voice, my dear friend. It's so good to see you here.
Tamara, I am so grateful to Neil from Portal to Ascension for putting us together, because we realized, and I'll share this with our audience, you and I are brother and sister on a soul level. We've been together many, many lifetimes before. And it's so wonderful to reconnect with someone, not only with the gifts that you have, but also the sense of humor that you have, because in this world, we need to have a sense of humor. So thank you.
Oh gosh, are you kidding? We had so much fun, and I was thinking when we were on that Portal to Ascension, I think that it's all worked out great. I'm not upset by it, but I thought on my end that we were only going to do our little part to interviews 1 or 2 people, but it ended up being it was fun, but these marathon days, so we really got to know each other.
And I'm grateful for that, because without that time, we would not have really come to the recognition of who we are to one another. And so again, I'm grateful to Neil and the Portal to Ascension for allowing us to meet and reunite, actually. So.
Oh yeah, we had fun there, and right then I was like, "Oh gosh," and it was such long hours that we just kind of relaxed and were ourselves. And I was thinking, "Oh gosh, what's he thinking of me? I'm kind of a handful," but you're quite a personality yourself. So I love your poetry. I want to find out first, because you have an amazing spiritual journey. I've heard some of it, not all of it, that your poetry and your love of poetry, I mean, you have this amazing voice. You're totally an oracle. You're a communicator. You're a healer. You're a healer of messages and energy and just your presence. Um, and it's amplified in your radio shows. Like when I hear your voice carry through, your frequency of the voice is just, it's healing, it's soothing. It really quite has dimension to it. And um, it's more than just, oh, you've got an amazing voice. It's something divine going on there, I recognize. But your poetry is also the same way. And the higher level ascended beings that I didn't plan on it. I was talking to Jesus for a long time, then other people started popping up. That they're very, they're different depending on who it is. Like Saint Ignatius, he talks in symbologies, and then others are very flowery. I've had Confucius come through, and he's more like Saint Ignatius, kind of to the point. But the others are more flowery, like Yogananda, or even Gandhi's a little bit more like that. That's come through to me, their personality. But the fact that you're speaking and you talk a lot about storytelling and poetry, that is actually a gift of the Ascended Masters.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I feel very blessed to have grown up in a family of people who really were into poetry. And I had especially an aunt of mine who used to encourage me to share my poetry and to allow the words to come through. And for me, poetry has always been an inspired activity. It hasn't been from me, it's been through me. That's the way I feel about all of the gifts that I share. They're coming through me, not from me. I'm just a vessel. And I remember as a kid thinking that I was the reincarnation of Edgar Allan Poe. When I was around 8 or 9 years old, I had this thought. I was so in love with the work of Edgar Allan Poe, I thought I was his reincarnation. And this poem came through me, which was so Poean. I still remember it to this day. It was called Injustice. And the poem went, "The blocks were closed around my neck. The splintered hole burned my neck sore. The blade would come tumbling to my neck, and I would see daylight no more. The king had summoned me to death. He said that I had been disloyal. Soon I would swallow my last breath to end a life of stress and toil. And now the black masked man, he comes to release the blade of destiny. 'Twas not the blade that gave me death. 'Twas the crime of injustice gave death to me." 8 years old.
Ooh.
Maybe I am the reincarnation.
You might be, I kind of got the chills. I mean, it's a little deep for a little 8-year-old. Well, I was going to the library at 12 looking at Edgar Casey. I don't know why I was, because I remembered him like a brother. So let me ask you that. Do you remember? I mean, look, let's go deep with this. Let's have fun with it. I mean, do you remember like past life stuff, or feeling kind of like, why am I here? This feels like, a stranger in a strange land. Did you feel like you came from someplace else? Did you have memories? Did you like sci-fi?
I'll share something with you. When I was a kid, without going into a lot of details, I had a dad who was very much into corporal punishment. And as a very precocious young man, I started taking things apart when I was a kid, appliances and things of this nature. And this is in the 1950s we're talking about. And sometimes I couldn't put them back together. And my father's response was to take off his belt and hit me with it. And we reconciled this later on. But
I know. I had the belt. It was brutal.
And when that would happen, I would run into my closet in my little room and sit at the controls of my spaceship and look up and say, "Take me off this place. I don't belong here." 5 years old. 5 years old.
Okay, Victor, I'm still doing that every day. I'm still waiting for them all to land. So let's get on that ship together. All right.
Can you read? Can you see that?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, look. You want to see my spirit animal? Okay, this is my spirit animal.
Unicorn, of course. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
or Pegasus, which is but yeah, I am with you, brother. I'm with you. So did you have any, I never asked you this. Did you have any, I mean, I'm still trying to get to know you too. I mean, you're so fascinating. Did you I know you've had a lot of spiritual experiences, and I want to hear about the supernatural ones too. Have you had any star galactic cosmic experiences?
Absolutely. I don't know if you can hear it, but
Ooh.
there's a huge thunderclap that just happened outside. So it's bringing forth the messages. So I'll share them with you. My first conscious experience was at age 5. And my conscious experience was my special teachers would come at night. They'd take me to a special classroom and teach me things that a 5-year-old, this would be 1958, that a 5-year-old would not have any access to or would not
Mm.
normally be interested in. When my young friends were interested in toy soldiers and toy trucks and things, sporting goods and things of that nature, I was interested in science. I was interested in how things worked. I was interested in electronics and radios at 1958, 5 years old. And when I would share with my parents that I was at night school, I used to call it night school because I never considered any of these experiences abductions. They were always very natural and very friendly to me.
I was at the night school with you. I told you that. It's the
That's
school of
right.
Melchizedek.
That's right.
The school of Melchizedek. They had me real young, and they would take me there, and it was really great. We learned really advanced stuff like sacred geometry.
That's where we met.
I know it is so exciting. Now we meet in the flesh. It's so cool. We look so much better in our etheric body because we're like all like, whatever, like
But I would
glowy.
share but I would share these experiences with my parents, and they would say I had an overactive imagination. So now I was very close with my paternal grandfather, my father's father, and he was a very spiritual man. And he would talk to me not as a child, but as someone who understood what he was talking about.
Right.
And he once showed me the Jewish scroll, the Hebrew scroll, the Torah, and he
Mm,
said, "Do you know what's
love
in
it.
this? You know what's in this?" And I said, "Yes, it's the story of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob." And he said, "More than that, it's the history of everything that ever was or ever will be." And I said, "Grandpa, how are you saying something like that?" He says, "When you're older, you'll understand. You're going to need 32 pair of eyes to understand what I'm talking about." And of course, I had no
Terrifying.
understanding. 32 pair of eyes, Grandpa. I had no understanding. But about 25 or 30 years ago, with the advent of 32-bit computer, there were people over in Germany and Israel who took the scroll, digitized it onto a computer, and came up with what's called the Torah code or the Bible code. Now, how did my grandfather, who was a metal worker, someone who worked with his
Oh
hands
my
in the
gosh.
1950s, be able to know that in 2000 or late 1900 2000 that such a thing would exist? So again, he was a lot of my inspiration, was my grandfather. In any event, I'm 7 years old and I'm sitting in my room and I'm reading a book or something, and I look up and Grandpa's standing there. I said, "Grandpa, when did you come in?"
Oh,
No answer, just a big smile on his face. And he slowly disappeared. He dissolved. And I went into the living room and I said, "Grandpa was here." And my parents said, you're imagining things again. That's that overactive imagination.
there you go
And
again.
and a couple of minutes later, the phone rang with word of my grandfather's passing. So that was my first experience, remembered experience of seeing disembodied energy, the soul, the spirit, whatever you want to call what we are, the true nature of what we are, not these bodies. And so that was my first experience of that. Then, when I was in first grade, which would have been 1959 or 1959, I think it was, the teacher had a book in the room called "You Will Go to the Moon." And I saw the book and I said to the teacher, "Can I borrow this, take it home and read it?" And she said, "Absolutely." And it was a child's book about going to the moon, because they were talking about trips to the moon in the 1960s, but this is before that. This was 1959. And 2 weeks later, she said, "That book, you borrowed that book. You have to bring it back so that other children may read it." And I said, "I can't bring it back." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because it's wrong." And she said, "How do you know it's wrong?" And I said, because I've been there. Well, needless to say, my parents were called, school counselor, the principal's office, again, the overactive imagination. I had to bring the book back. But these were things that happened when I was a kid. And I think what's really fascinating to me, my mom, who passed in 2020, the last couple of years of
God
her
bless
life,
her.
she had Parkinson's disease, and I used to visit her often and bring her lunch and spend time with her. And one day she said to me, "No one in our family ever had anything like Parkinson's disease. Why do I have Parkinson's disease?" And I said, "Mom," I said, you never believed me when I would tell you the things that happened as a kid. But my younger brother and younger sister all have autoimmune conditions, different ones. And I have an autoimmune condition, not life-threatening, just something that we
Really?
live with. And the three of us, and I said, Mom, there have been stories of families who've had contact with extraterrestrial life, and sometimes they manifest genetic changes, which result sometimes in these conditions. I said, but
Would Hashimoto's have, like, I have thyroid.
Hashimoto's,
That's what I
absolutely.
have. I have the thyroid Hashimoto's. Yeah.
And I said, Mom, when I was a kid, you never believed me when I told you any of this. I said, you never had any strange experience, did you? Now, you got to remember, this is like 2 years before she passed away. She goes, no, except for that time, and the hair in the back of my neck starts standing up, except for that time that you were about a year old, which would have been January, February of 1954. She said, you were crying. It was 3 o'clock in the morning and you were crying, and I got up to make you a bottle. And I was in the kitchen, and all of a sudden, this amazing orange light came through the window, and that's the last thing I remember to the next day. I said, Mom, you have to wait all this time, though? I said, did you have any other strange experience? She goes, no, except for that time when your father was having surgery, and I was in the waiting room, and all of a sudden, I was up in the air looking down at myself sitting in the waiting room while your father was having surgery. She had an out-of-body experience while she was waiting for my father to come out of surgery.
Oh,
So she
wow.
finally, after all these years, confirmed for me what I had known all along, and I'm grateful and blessed that she did that confirmation prior to her passing.
Oh, are you kidding? To get that? And I find that when people get older, it's funny. My mother would never talk about things like that. Not she was stuffy. It just wasn't her in her world. But now she said to me recently, Victor, I think I told you, she said, well, I knew you're an odd child, but I didn't really know how odd till I saw, my promotions for the CNN channel and my guests like you. And I said, well, Mom, you should have known that. But now she's starting to talk about these things. And to me, it's a gift when people share these intimate things. What do you, or experiences, what do you think about the orange? Is that similar to the orange healing light that you had, do you think?
No, I don't know. It just an orange light that was
Hello.
manifest by whatever whatever the vehicle was or the beings who were coming for her. But
Mhm.
that's what she reported. She said orange. It could have been yellowish. I don't know. But that was what she reported to me. So what I'm grateful for, the gift that she gave me, is acknowledging that these things were also happening to her, and
Wow.
something that I needed to hear from her prior to her passing to confirm all the stuff that I was experiencing as a child. Had another situation when I was well, let me backtrack for a second. So, as I had mentioned, I had a rough relationship with my dad growing up. And then when I was 8 years old, he became ill. And while he was ill, he required surgery, and he lost a leg, and he had diabetes
Dear God.
and a lot of stuff. And I became part of his caretaking team with my mother. And for the first time in my life, I felt that he loved me. And it wired in my young mind that if you care for others, you will be loved. And that set a difficult pattern for me because I became what's known as a people pleaser. Every time I would be in a situation where someone would ask me for something or need something, I was Johnny on the spot, taking care of them, and often at the neglect of myself. And it took me into my late 40s until I finally recognized that I needed to take care of myself and that it was okay to say no when someone was asking for something that they really didn't need from me, just to take advantage of that situation. I had
We
the blessing.
are related.
There's no
Victor,
question
this
about it.
is just like, I think I just learned that like 5 years ago. I mean, it's just pathetic. No, maybe at 10. All right. But why is it that you just want to give and help freely? Why is that?
It's okay to want to give as long as you're not taken advantage of. I had a woman tell me something very profound. She said, I will never mistake your kindness for weakness. That opened my mind to the recognition that I can be kind and helpful without having to cede that which is mine, that the time that I need for me, the healing that I need for me, because I was running around and it cost me. I had to have some stents put into my heart and some other stuff. So
Oh,
again,
you're
the recognition that, I could use the N word, no, and say, no, I'm not going to do this, but do it
yeah.
in a way that was compassionate. In fact, it brought a poem through me called the Healing Power of No. Can I share that with you?
I'd love to. Yeah. No, no can be a good word.
Absolutely. It's called The Healing Power of No. And it says, a time comes for choosing rather than losing the essence that makes us so. And in the bestowing, there's power in knowing the freedom that comes with no. When said with compassion, not angry in fashion, and letting the self love flow, there's a sense of renewing and deep soul imbuing the awareness that comes with no. So, with gentle voice and the power of choice and the courage to make it so, I'm still here, my friends. There's no means in this end, just the healing that comes with no.
Oh my gosh, I need a copy of that. Can you email me that later?
Absolutely.
There's so many people watching right now. I just want to make a comment that are like us, that they're overgivers, and we need balance. We need to give and receive to ourselves, and let other people do things for us. That's the way of things, to give and take, not just give. Um, is it? I don't know if you have that public. Did you write that?
Yes, all of these poems that I
Oh
share
my
with
god,
you.
I mean, that's amazing. I actually wanna print that out and put it on the side of my refrigerator because I think it's really empowering, because it's a time in my life I ended up in the hospital, luckily no heart thing. I was in the heart division, but it was just anxiety from giving too much.
Yeah.
Working too much. I understand, at least it didn't go that far, but I knew that would be the next stage if I didn't pull back. Yeah, I would love that for the viewers to see that.
Absolutely, and I'm actually putting together a collection of my poems. I have probably 200 or 300 poems. I'm going to probably select 100 for the first book, and my goal is to have a book published of my poetry before the end of this year. So I will share that with you when I have it.
Okay. Okay, that's wonderful, and I'll help you promote it because I just love your poetry. All right. So there's so many things to tell. So did you have when you I'm curious. I know you use your voice in the military. Did you have any paranormal experiences or supernatural experiences when you're in the military?
Absolutely, I've had them, like I said, since childhood, and one of them. How much time have we got left on this segment? I think.
Oh, about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, super. So back in 1975, I was stationed in Korea. I was with Armed Forces Radio and TV in Korea. It was called AFKN, the American Forces Korean Network. And I was doing newscasting and I was doing some other stuff. And one day I had this message in my head, and I've been getting messages since I was a child. And it's always a quiet, sort of a reassuring voice, but it's a voice that tells me to take action when I need to take action. And the voice said, you need to reach out to your mother back in New York. She's not well. She needs to hear from you. And so consequently, I called my mother. And in those days, we had for the youngsters who are listening or watching, there were wired telephones, and you could have an extension for your telephone. It wasn't like a cell phone. You had a wired phone, and you could have extensions in your home of those telephones. And my mother and sister picked up the phone simultaneously. And I said, Mom, is anything wrong? Now I'm 6,000 miles away, hadn't gotten a letter or talked to her in a while. And my sister goes, oh my God, how did he find out? And it turned out that she was scheduled for major surgery the next day. And immediately the voice told me to tell her that everything would be fine. She'd have a complete and total recovery, and she was going to be just fine. And she needed to hear those words from me. It reassured her. And sure enough, she had her surgery. She had a complete recovery, and everything worked out as the voice had said that it would work out.
Wow.
And she needed to hear that message from me.
Well, that's what, I notice about you. You really listen to that inner voice and you follow that direction, and you don't go against that, which is really honoring yourself. So I will say that, even though you said you're a people pleaser, I get it, but not anymore. But that you do follow that inner voice, and that I think that says a lot. That's what I think spirit or team God looks for, people that say yes.
There was a wonderful line from an old Moody Blues song saying, make a promise, take a vow, and trust your feelings. It's easy now. Understand the voice within and feel the change already beginning. Those are the words of Justin Hayward, not mine. But I love that song because it really echoes what we're talking about.
Oh, yes. I mean, and the thing is, words matter. In my NDE with Jesus, he said, we manifest through our words and they're powerful. And so be very mindful of your selection of your words. And I think that you truly are an example of exactly what he says because you're very artful with your words, which is a lost skill that I haven't seen in a long time. So speaking of skills that you have, when you were in the military, I bet you told a lot of crazy stories and had those guys laughing, didn't you?
Not really, because I was a very serious newscaster, and that was really my
Okay.
main role there. And it was about delivering significant messages. But I did have
Okay.
another experience when I was over there that is kind of remarkable, a healing experience, a personal healing experience. I had some damage to my back from a football injury, and a friend of mine suggested that I try acupuncture. Now, this is 1975 again. And a friend of mine suggested that I try acupuncture. I'd never had acupuncture. I'd heard of it, but I'd never had it before. So I figured I'd try it out. And I went and I saw a Korean acupuncturist, and he gave me the treatment. And the pain actually started subsiding very nicely within a day or so after the treatment. And I said, this is wonderful. This is my healing, my treatment. About 2 weeks later, I woke up, and in the morning, I looked in the mirror, and my eyes were turning yellow. And I said, uh-oh, something's not right
What?
here. And what I didn't know was that in those days, a couple of things. Number one, the acupuncturists in Korea at the time did not use disposable needles. Their sterilization techniques weren't the best. And hepatitis B was endemic, which means many people carried it without manifesting the disease. So I went to the military hospital and they looked at me at the desk and they said, "You have hepatitis." They immediately admitted me and they started treating me. And they started treating me differently than they were treating the other uh, airmen and soldiers who were on the same ward with me. They were giving me shots of vitamin K. I didn't know what was going on. And the doctor came in one day and said, "Do you have a will?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, we're going to have somebody from the Judge Advocate General's office come and get a will for you." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, you're very seriously ill and you want to protect your family." I said, "I don't have a lot." He said, "You want to protect your family." So they had a will. So I started getting weaker and weaker and feeling sicker and sicker. And they actually put me into a private room. And the voice came to me one morning and said, "Ask the doctor for a picture of a healthy liver." And I said, "What?" "Ask the doctor for a picture of a healthy liver." So when the doctor was making his rounds, I said, "Do you have anything that shows a picture of a healthy liver?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I would like to see it." He says, "Well, I can bring you an anatomy book that'll have a picture of a drawing or a picture of a healthy liver." I said, "Please do." And he brought me an anatomy book, left it with me, and I started studying this picture. Later that evening, I was studying the picture, and the voice said, "Put the book down and place your hands over your abdomen." And I always listen to the voice, and I put my hands over my abdomen, and I started feeling this wonderful, this warm, tingling sensation. And it went on for a while, and I don't remember. At some point, I fell asleep. 5 o'clock the next morning, the nurse came in. She apologized for waking me up and said, "We need to take your blood." So she took a blood sample. 2 hours later, she came back. She said, "I'm really sorry. The laboratory messed up your blood sample. We need to take another draw." She took another draw. An hour later, the doctor came in and said, "After I gave you the book yesterday, what did you do?" And I told him. He says, "You're crazy." So what do you mean I'm crazy? He said, "Last night, we didn't think you'd survive till the morning. This morning, your blood liver enzyme levels, which were so high, they were out of sight, are almost normal. And we've never seen anything like that happen before." And in my official military records, he wrote, "Luckiest SOB I've ever met in my entire life." He actually wrote this in my official military medical records. So you would think that that experience would have been my aha moment. I said, "Yes, this is my path." But I wasn't ready. I was in my mid-20s at the time, and it took until my mid to late 30s for my path to reopen. And I think we'll talk about that in the next show.
Yeah, wow. This is amazing because I really want to parlay kind of get into the next show, part two. I want to discuss how you came to terms with your healing abilities and also your cosmic identity as a starseed, maybe from Pleiades, as we talked about. And some of us have memories, like me, from Sirius, and kind of go into that route because you are a powerful healer. But again, I understand you having to be ready. Well, look, I want to put it down below where everyone can get a hold of you. Tell everybody about your radio shows and how to get in touch with you and listen to your wonderful programs.
Thank you. I do 2 podcasts with Om Times magazine. My dear friends from Om Times, who I met in 2016, and they asked me to join them and do a podcast. My initial podcast, my pilot podcast, is omtimes.com/IOM/shows/destination-unlimited. And Destination Unlimited was my first show, which I've been doing since 2016. And it's the crossroads of science and spirituality. And I've had so many wonderful, wonderful guests on there discussing these topics. And the other
Like
show that
me.
I'm sorry, like
Like
you,
me.
absolutely, like my sister Tamara, absolutely, absolutely. And then the other show I started in 2020 when COVID came around. I realized there was a need for another show, something that would talk about living through COVID and also the changes in our society. And the
Right.
show is called Vox Novus, the New Voice. And that's again, omtimes.com/IOM/shows/Vox, VOX dash Novus, NOVUS, which is Latin for the new voice. And I have people on those podcasts who talk about the changes that we've been through, talk about things that people can do to make their lives better. So those are the 2 shows that I do.
Oh, that's wonderful. Again, always being a healer. And I also want to point back to your website, which you said you're going to update. So,
I
okay.
have a website which is sorely neglected. I'll just put it that way, sorely neglected.
I
But
know my Southern Belle Medium needs an upgrade too. I know.
there's some interesting stuff on there. It's victorthevoice.com. And I actually share some of my experiences that we've been discussing and some wonderful things that I've shared. There are links to some of the older shows on there, and I'm in the process of updating that because I just officially retired from my day job on Friday, March 29th, and now I have a lot more time to address the more spiritual aspects of my life. So I'll be working on that website.
Well, look, you are such a joy. And when we do the part 2, I want you to talk about how cool that you not only a healer, but you're a technical mind, and how you came about your job, and how you, it wasn't a job, but your technical expertise, and to go into that too, because I don't want to leave that out. Look, let's get ready for part 2 and stay tuned. And thank you so much, Victor. And I will see you in our next segment.
Tamara,
Thank
my sister, thank you so much.
thank you. Bye. Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.